Okay, we're recording.
What if we just started by cackling?
My mom, when she laughs...
It's like the worst way to start a podcast.
My mom, when she laughs, she either sounds like a car starting, or she has like an old witch laugh. Yeah, when she laughs and she sounds like a car, it's like... I can't even do it justice because it sounds like a car trying to start.
That's great.
And my sister's ex-boyfriend, from a long time ago, he loved making my mom laugh because he thought it was so funny. The way that she would laugh. Or she cackles. You can hear her laughing.
That's great.
I love it.
So, now that it's on Hulu, I started watching Golden Girls from the beginning, which is great because, you know how, something like Golden Girls that is in syndication all the time. It's always not Golden Girls or Seinfeld or something like that you see all the time, but maybe you didn't watch
in their first run
all the way through in the way that you would watch other shows like Breaking Bad. Yeah. So it's really fun to go back and watch a show like that, like Golden Girls, because you learn things from starting from the beginning that you that are so pivotal to the show. Or a character that you wouldn't know from just watching random episodes. And it's so the thing that I learned starting from the beginning is that the reason Sophia is so sassy and has no filter is because she had a stroke.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know. I just love that's a detail that if you don't know that, it kind of changes how you look at her character.
Oh, yeah. I had no idea. That's
you just
funny.
think she's a sassy woman from Sicily.
Yeah.
Which she is, but she's her sassiness is because she had a stroke. And they say she had a stroke and the part of her brain that...
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
That's a real thing that happens?
Yeah, that's a thing. Your personality can change a little bit after a stroke if it hits certain parts of your brain.
They just hit all the good parts for her.
I loved that. I love that it was mentioned once in the pilot and never again. And it's so pivotal to her character.
Oh, I love that too. It's funny going back and watching TV shows like that. Not recently, but at one point I went back and watched Sports Night, which is a show that I remember fondly. And I remembered it being kind of similar to The West Wing. That's how I remembered it in my head. It had a laugh track that I totally blocked out of my memory. And also, Matthew had blocked it out of his memory too. So the first episode that we were watching, the laugh track came on and we were both like, wait,
whoa,
what is this? And it just kept going. And it was a totally different television show than what both of us remembered.
Yeah.
So either your brain kind of just puts wherever into wherever, however you want to keep it.
Yeah.
Or we jumped timelines. We jumped dimensions, which is possible. I don't know.
It's always possible. There's no way to prove it didn't happen.
Exactly. Bernstein.
Bears.
Bernstein. I don't know.
That is a conspiracy that's on the internet that I know it's a thing, but I don't get it.
I'm definitely one of those people that thinks that time is an illusion and the dimensions that we live in are illusions. I feel like we all live in a matrix. Not the movie The Matrix, but a matrix, and that...
Shout out to Keanu!
Yeah. Oh
my boy
God.
John Wick!
Oh my God, Keanu Reeves. John Wick. I'm clutching my pearls right now. John Wick. Let's just take a minute to... Respect Keanu Reeves in that movie, because when you're watching it, there were parts in the second one where I was watching and I was like, oh, that could have easily been a stunt double, and he doesn't do all of his stunts. He doesn't. They won't let him. But there are parts where I was like, that could have easily been a stunt double, but he has such a strange posture that I can't imagine a stunt double being able to do all of that and mimic at the same time as well. So I'm pretty sure he was doing most of his stunts.
Like the stairs
thing. Yeah, like there were a lot of things where I was just like, oh, that is 100% Keanu, and they could have just used a stunt double, and it's because he moves his body in a really weird way.
Let's write an unauthorized biography of Keanu, call it 100% Keanu.
I mean, I may already write fan fiction about John Wick.
Good luck finding it on the internet. If you can find it, we'll send you a SheSplain t-shirt.
That doesn't exist. Yeah, that's what will happen. Well, it will say I found Keanu fan fiction, and all I got was this ironed-on t-shirt.
We could have t-shirts by the time this comes out.
Maybe. Who knows?
You never know.
Never know. We don't know.
That could be a different continuum matrix thing.
Because if you don't know, we record a month in advance.
Yeah, we do.
Which is actually, I think we should actually point out that that's why we don't talk a lot about specific political things.
Yeah.
Is because we record so far in advance that it's really difficult for us to kind of backtrack and add it in.
It'd be like old news.
Yeah, it's old news. Everything's moving so rapidly, we can't really do it. We don't have the manpower for that. We want to, we don't
have the woman.
We don't have the woman power for it. We don't. We want to. It's just not something that we're capable of doing right now. Maybe in the future we will start a Patreon and we'll be able to do that. I don't know.
What's Patreon?
Oh, we'll get into that at some point. Okay. So for this episode, it's a 2-part episode, and in both parts we're talking about women who were pivotal in a lot of different things. I don't want to say just in the women's movement or women's rights, but definitely have their place there as well and don't really get the spotlight put on them as often. That's what we're doing. So someone that I wanted to talk about today is Miss Major. Miss Major Griffin Gacy. She was a trans rights activist. The reason why I want to talk about her in particular is because, well, she was at Stonewall and she's done a lot of things for trans rights. The thing that I think is really important about her is that she was retired now. But she worked for the TGI Justice Project, which is Transgender, Gender Variant, Intersex Justice Project. And what they do is their mission is to challenge and end the human rights abuses committed against TGI people in California prisons, jails, detention centers, and beyond. So they provide legal services and point people in the direction of social services. And I'll get into her involvement with them. She was born in Chicago in 1940, and she came out as a teenager, not as transgender, but as gay. And
in 1940,
she came out as a teenager, which I think is really interesting because she's African American. So on top of being African American during that time, she was also out, which was really difficult. And she said that, to avoid mistreatment by peers or to, avoid being singled out and attacked, she would have to have someone with her at all times.
Wow.
And she discussed then that for her, the terminology for gender identities didn't exist the way that it does today.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't as easy to know that you were questioning your gender. And so that's just a little bit of her background when it comes to that. And she was at Stonewall, which a lot of people don't remember about her. I mean, people in the community definitely know that because it's part of her story. I didn't know that for a long time. Yeah. I knew what Stonewall was, but I didn't know that what happened. The Stonewall Inn was a place for the LGBTQ community to have a safe space. It was one of the few bars, even among gay bars, that accepted transgender women in their community. And there was a raid on, I think it was maybe the night of the 27th, night of the 27th, morning of the 28th.
And sorry, what was the year?
1969.
Okay, cool. And where is Stonewall?
It's in Greenwich Village.
In New York, right?
Yeah,
New York
in
City,
New York.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the few places where there was any kind of community at the time.
Any community. And it was still a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Still very much a secret. And so there was a police raid, and it was violent, and they weren't going to just go to prison willingly. They knew that they were within their rights, and they demonstrated. And one of the people that we need to mention is Marsha P. Johnson, who was an integral part of that. I haven't seen the movie Stonewall because I knew that it was whitewashed and not historically accurate, so there was no point. But I have heard that they totally erased her from that movie. She was like the first one to protest. She was like the first one to throw a stone. And Sylvia Rivera was also really important to that. But Miss Major was there, and when the riot started, she was hit over the head and knocked out. And so she was taken into police custody. And while she was there, she suffered a broken jaw by one of the corrections officers, which is awful.
Yeah.
I don't want to say she was in and out of jail her whole life, because I don't think I think that sounds kind of negative, but she has been incarcerated several times in her life.
Related to her activism?
Not related to her activism. She's actually a sex worker.
Oh, okay.
So,
which at the time, that was one of the few things that out trans women could do.
It was, and it kind of still is today, but that's part of what she does. And the reason why I want to talk about her, too, is that while she is an activist, she's mostly known in that community as being kind of a mother figure and trying to guide all of these people in the right direction and give them self-worth and tell them you can do more than this.
Yeah.
But
not that there's
at the same time saying it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with it. And that's why I wanted to talk about her too, because she's not necessarily like a glittery figure. And when I say that, I mean like she was a sex worker. She did receive welfare throughout her life. She was incarcerated. You know, she had to buy her hormones on the black market. She's all of those things that society kind of either shields you from or tells you is wrong.
Yeah. And
it's not wrong. You and I were having a conversation earlier. Things such as welfare are put there so that when you need them, that's what they're for. And we make them such a shameful thing in our society.
Yeah.
But they're really needed, and it's okay to use those resources. And a lot of times trans women, they're denied out of prejudice. And it's something that really affects their quality of life. And she advocated, I don't want to say mostly, but definitely a lot for low income trans women of color. So she had a friend named Puppy who was murdered. She was a sex worker as well, and I tried finding more information on Puppy, but I couldn't really find a whole lot, which is unfortunate because I feel like her story is really interesting because they covered it up and said that it was a suicide, which
oh my God.
happens a lot. It happens often. And I think that was kind of an awakening for her, for Miss Major. And what she said was about that is, Puppy's murder made me aware that we were not safe or untouchable, and that if someone does touch us, no one gives a shit. We only have each other. We always knew this, but now we needed to take a step towards doing something about it. So I started looking out for myself and the girls who worked on the street with me. We girls decided that whenever we got into a car with someone, another girl would write down as much information as possible. We would try not to just lean into the car window, but to get a guy to walk outside the car so everyone could see him. So we all knew who he was if she didn't come back. That's how it started. So no one was going to do it for us. We had to do it for ourselves. So that's when her activism or her role in the trans community, not entirely, because obviously she was doing stuff before that for the community, but I think that was really the fuel that lit her.
Yeah.
And she's really important because she is so strong in saying that allies have their place in everything, and it's important to have them, but when it comes to certain movements, it's more important to have those people as the leaders. And so she really tried to take that position. I think that as white women, it's really easy for us to kind of say like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to rally behind it and step into spots that we shouldn't be stepping into.
Absolutely.
I do that. I know I do that. And I don't.
Well, I think for you and I, it's very much part of our personality to take charge and try to lead. And even just in small things, like, you know, when we're involved with events or like within our social group, and it's part of our personality. So it's something that we need to be really super aware of when we're outside of just our social group and we're talking about something that's bigger than us.
And I think that a lot of allies try to do that, and it's hard to want to help and to know when you need to stop your help. But we're all getting better.
Absolutely.
We're all getting better about it. So in 2005, this is weird. And what kind of bothered me is that her information on the internet is so skewed. Like there, you know, I would read one article and it was like in 2003 she started doing this, and then I would read another article and it would say in 2004, and so I tried to go with the best source possible, but it's pretty mixed on the internet. I mean, I don't have an encyclopedia with her information in it. So.
I found that with some of the things that I was researching too, and I think the problem is just that we're talking about women that aren't as present in the collective popular history.
Yeah.
And so maybe the sources there's not as many, and so the fact checking isn't.
It gets lost.
Yeah.
That's frustrating.
It is frustrating. I definitely came across some things that were wrong.
So I apologize if I am wrong about anything. I really do. I tried my hardest to find the most accurate information that I could. But, you know. It's Google.
Yeah, I mean, just for example, when I was talking about Bessie Coleman on Wikipedia, the Wright brothers, everybody knows about the Wright brothers. They had 150 sources on Wikipedia, and there's just 27 for Bessie. At least a couple of them were YouTube videos of just some person talking about.
Yeah, I saw that a lot too.
And I mean, I'm sure they did their research. Well, I don't know that they did their research, and that's the problem, is that we don't know how reputable that source is, and I doubt some person that just has a YouTube channel is fact checking. Yeah. I mean, we have a podcast and we're doing our best, but yeah. We don't have fact checkers.
We don't.
On staff.
We don't. Our intern is not here to do that.
We have an intern?
No, we don't.
Hey, if you want an internship.
Yeah, if you want an intern for SheSplain, I don't think we can legally do that, but like you can hang out with us.
It could be just like a friendship.
Yeah.
Where you do things for... Just kidding. That's wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong.
We're not going to use people.
Okay. In 2005 was when she started working with the TGI Justice Project. And it's so important. And what she would do is she was the executive director, which was another thing that I found was that I went with what their website says. Mm-hmm. But all over the internet, she has all of these different different titles. It was so weird.
Yeah.
And so I just went with what they said on their website. And she would meet with individuals and kind of go over their legal process and their social resources outside of prison and in prison. And she would do that. She would create groups to do that. And she would go to all of these prisons and really help in that effort. The reason why that's so important is because it says on the website, there are at most 5 people in the United States who work full-time on transgender rights in prison, which makes Miss Major an invaluable bridge from incarcerated transgender individuals to advocates and even advocacy targets like prison wardens and lawmakers. So there are barely any people doing this. And there's very few organizations that are doing it too. And I'm sorry, that's not from their website. That was from an article, but I'll list it on our show notes.
Yeah.
So according to a 2002 study of the Bay Area transgender community, And this was done by the National Center for Lesbian Rights and the Transgender Law Center. 14% of the people who responded reported serving time in prison or jail at some point in their lives. And at the time...
What is that?
14%. That's...
Wow.
Of all the transgender people that they interviewed, 14% of them had been in prison or incarcerated. And at the time, that was double the national average.
Oh my gosh.
For, of people in the country as a whole. That was double.
Wow.
It's a big problem. The mass incarceration of transgender women and men in our prison systems are already a huge problem.
Ugh.
But this is an even bigger problem on top of it.
Yeah.
And also the reason why it's a huge problem is the abuse in the prison systems. And there was a study done by the Center for Evidence-Based Corrections, and it showed that 4% of people in men's prisons in California reported experiencing sexual assault, and 59% of transgender women in prisons reported experiencing sexual assault, meaning transgender women are 13 times more likely to be victimized. And she said about that, correction officers assume our behavior as transgender women is always sexual. Ugh. They think we just see a dick and fall on our knees and worship it. This idea weighs heavily on how they see us. If we're involved, they assume we're guilty because we just have to have it. They ask, what did you do to excite him and make him want to hurt you? Yeah. So, while she is retired now, she did a lot with that organization, and that organization is doing a lot of really wonderful things trying to help transgender women in the prison systems in California. And
can I ask a question that is maybe kind of ignorant, but when you're talking about that, what you just said about the sexual assault in prisons, and are these trans women, are they in men's prisons?
That's what I was just going to talk about. Yes. A lot of the times they are.
Currently,
a lot of the time
still?
Yes.
In California?
Yes. I don't know today exactly how many transgender women are in men's prisons, but it does still happen.
I mean...
And that's part of the issue, and that was part of the issue that she was working on, is because you shouldn't be in a... If you are not a man, you should not be in a men's prison. And it just opens you up for abuse.
Well,
It opens you up for abuse and violence within the prison, which is, I mean, just already an issue, but we don't need to...
If someone is a target for violence in that way, it just... God, I don't even... I feel really ignorant that I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I knew that incarceration of trans people was a problem, but that's... Wow.
Yeah. So that was the work that I really wanted to talk about with her, because I think it's something that is so overlooked, and it's a huge issue. And she, of course, has done many other things aside from this, but I just felt like this was really important to talk about and to point out that she has had such an effect. She is known for also working, I believe, with different AIDS foundations, and she's a self-described feminist. Mm-hmm. I have a quote about that, and she said, "I'd like for girls to get a chance to be who they are, for young transgender people to go to school, learn like everyone else does, and then get out there and live their lives, not afraid or thinking that the only solution for them is death." So, and I think she looks at feminism as the way that we look at feminism, where if you're not supporting women, then you're not supporting feminism. I just think she's really important, and
absolutely. Yeah, and it's really important for feminism to have leaders that represent different types of women.
Yeah, and she represented such an underrepresented type of woman, mm-hmm. which is trans women of color in low income situations.
Absolutely.
And they're always overlooked. Always.
Yeah.
A lot of times, even when they're not being overlooked, they're being ridiculed or not taken seriously. And it's important for them to have someone that they can look at as such a positive role model.
Just from what I have heard, I'm not a trans woman, so I can't speak for them, obviously. But just from what I've read and what I've heard, I think a lot of trans women don't feel included in the feminism movement. And obviously, they feel that way for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's important for cis women like us to acknowledge that and to be working in the opposite direction, to be listening to leaders that don't look like us and have different experiences than us, and to acknowledge that they are just as much a part of the feminist movement as we are, and their experiences are just as important.
Yeah, and to really value what their stories bring to our table.
Because no two women have the same life experiences.
No.
And no one woman has all of the experiences that a woman can have. So all of the stories, all of the experiences are important and need to be represented and need to be heard.
Truth. Truth.
Yes.
So that is Ms. Major. I'm going to watch a documentary tonight.
Absolutely. So another woman that I think is really super rad that I didn't know about until recently, her name is Dodge Wauneka. She was the first Native American woman to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1963 by President Lyndon Johnson for her efforts to improve healthcare among her people. And she served on the advisory board for the U.S. Surgeon General and the U.S. Public Health Service. And she was elected in 1951 to the Tribal Council. And she was the second woman ever to be elected, which is really cool.
That is cool.
She was really influential within the Navajo community. She worked to change the standards of health and sanitation among the tribal members. She was a big advocate of vaccinations. She worked really hard to get better care for pregnant women and infants. She advocated for eye and ear examinations. And also another issue that she worked on a lot was alcoholism, which is a big problem within the Native American communities in the U.S. She also worked on improving housing conditions, introducing wooden floors, modern plumbing, improving sanitary conditions for Native American communities. She actually had a radio show that she did in the Navajo language. And
that's cool.
Yeah. The main focus was promoting modern health practices among Native Americans. She was really incredible. You know, she saw this big need within her community and worked really hard to improve the standards for her people.
I love that.
Yeah, she's really
great. That's a
great.
community that's overlooked a lot.
There are a lot of issues that Native American women specifically face.
And it's actually not even just in America. It's in Canada as well.
And I mean, like Australia is let's not even get into that.
Canada has a high murder rate for their Indigenous women.
Right. Have you listened to that podcast?
No.
Yeah, there's this really amazing podcast called Missing and Murdered, Who Killed Alberta Williams. I believe it's CBC, the Canadian broadcast company. And that's just one case that they're highlighting, that what you're talking about, the really high, and it's not just murder, it's that they go missing and
they're missing. And it's a really big problem. It's
something that people forget. People forget that there are issues that affect Native American women specifically. We need to be part of their fight too. Yep,
it's true. Okay, so earlier I said that we were going to talk about the Flint water crisis.
Yeah.
Do you know who Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha is?
No.
She's actually the whistleblower on the entire thing. And now she is the director of Pediatric Public Health Initiative for Hurley Medical Center and Michigan State University. She, on September 24th, 2015, in a press conference, she revealed findings in her research that she had conducted. And she said that the children's blood levels had doubled since the water switch in 2014. So for those who don't know about the Flint water crisis, the city of Flint in Michigan, they switched their water sources. It may have been April or August. I'm pretty sure it was April. They started using a different water source, and that water source was contaminated with lead. Basically, no one cared. It was cheaper. They weren't going to fix the situation. And
I mean, did they not test it before they switched over?
Oh, it had been tested in the past, and it was deemed a hazard and not used, and that's why they had switched it in the first place, and then they switched back. And I think the reason why it wasn't a big deal is because Flint is a hard city. It's I don't know if anyone's ever seen Roger and Me, but Flint took a really hard hit when General Motors left Michigan, and their communities suffered a lot from it. So these are low-income communities. It's people of color that live in Flint, and the government doesn't care about them, and they don't care about the children. And this doctor was conducting research on it, and so she was the key whistleblower, and she told at a press conference, at this press conference, she told what her findings were before they had even been confirmed by her peers, because she felt that it was so important. So she risked her job and her credibility as a doctor in order to tell somebody that was going to listen. And when she was doing her research, she asked the state of Michigan for information, and they refused to give it to her. So she had to do all of her research with hospital electronic medical records. So like it wasn't even something that the state of Michigan was interested in doing. And I'm from Michigan. I'm fairly close to this area. So I know this is something that like obviously I'm going to care a lot about, but I know how hard that was for the people in that community before all of this happened. And nothing was ever going to be done if she hadn't said anything. No one was ever going to care about it. I mean, it's kind of dropped off the radar now. People don't really care about it anymore, even though it's still happening. Like, the people of Flint, Michigan have not had clean water since 2014. Like, they're bathing their children in poisoned water because they have nothing else. And the government isn't giving them, they gave them filters, water filters, that don't even work. There are so many interviews with people where they're like, look at this filter, this is what I was given, and you can still see the contamination and the pollution in it. Ugh. She's been ridiculed. She was actually ridiculed a lot before she was ridiculed a lot at first when she was like, this is what's happening. Other people in her community were like, ugh, yeah, right. Like, they basically told her that her findings were not necessarily unimportant, but definitely not on the top of the list and didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And she was like, that's not true.
I mean, we really take water
for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do take water for granted. And I want to point out again, it's still happening. They still do not have water in the city of Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit.
It's frustrating. I mean, we were talking about celebrities that have their causes and stuff, and like, water is something that people think about in third world countries.
Yeah.
And this is something that's happening at home, and it's a pretty big deal.
It's a huge deal. It's such a big deal. And a lot of celebrities they definitely lended their name in the beginning of the crisis. And I understand that there are so many things happening right now. It's hard to be a social justice warrior for everything, but these are children. And, you know, I'm a feminist and I feel like I'm an activist for a lot of things, but first and foremost, children need to come first in our country.
Well, this is something that's going to affect them for the rest of their lives.
For the rest of their lives. They already are. They already are. And we don't care. Like, I don't want to say that this is the most important thing, but when we're poisoning our children and we're just like letting it happen, like, we need to kind of take a step back and reassess what our priorities are.
Yeah.
And kind of put them in order. And this is still something that's taking a back seat, and it shouldn't be. And it's because of the community. if this was happening in a nice, rich, white neighborhood, it wouldn't happen. It would not have happened.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened. And it's sickening. It's disgusting. Without her, it would be worse.
Yeah.
So we thank her.
Thank you.
We love her.
Another woman I want to acknowledge as being important to women's history, or just history in general, really, is Henrietta Lacks. I want to mention her because there's a movie or I think it's a TV series coming out about her soon. It's Oprah Winfrey is in it, and Oprah's great, obviously. So she's definitely getting more recognition, but for a really long time, she did not get any recognition. Her rare cancer cells were used and are still used today for countless medical research that has made so many medical advancements possible. Her cells, they're known as HeLa cells, and they're responsible for cloning, gene mapping, in vitro fertilization. The thing that's the worst part about her story is, she had cancer and she died, and for a really long time, her family didn't know what an impact she made on the medical community and advancements within the field.
Just bullshit.
It's really upsetting. And not only that, but there were labs that were making money off of her. And it was just really not cool. So the book about her is incredible. It's called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And I mean, for people that aren't super into nonfiction, this book is...
Oh, yeah, that's a good thing to point out. It's good.
You can put that aside because this is... And it's just a great story. And I'm really excited that it's being made into...
Finally.
Yeah, finally.
Finally.
Mm-hmm.
She deserves recognition.
Yeah, she's so important.
Yeah.
So, Candace Pert, she was a scientist, and she discovered the brain's opioid receptor while she was a graduate student at Johns Hopkins, despite discouragement from her graduate advisor who was like, why are you doing that? And then he went ahead and received and accepted the 1978 Lasker Award for scientific work that was made possible by her discovery.
Was he a white guy?
Yes.
I'm not surprised.
She was not acknowledged for her contribution. She still isn't. I checked the Lasker Foundation website.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know what to say because she's not acknowledged on the website. She says in her book that he told her that's how the game is played.
Gross. That's gross.
Yeah, it's really messed up.
What game? What game is that?
The game of science.
No, you're a scientist. No. You don't have a game.
It's not okay.
That's not okay.
It's not okay. After that, she kept going, and she did some really pivotal work that led to advancements in the treatment for HIV with HIV entry inhibitors. So she did a lot of really incredible work. And, it started off with being totally overlooked, and she kept going.
Good for her, 'cause I would have been really upset.
Yeah.
I would have been like, that's the game. I want nothing to do with this. But
yeah,
I'm proud of her.
Yeah.
I'm proud of her.